the question is, can we follow this path effectively without compromise? What I mean by this is, can we still lead the lives we lead and follow this path effectively? Is it a path like that? For example, we have this notion that we have to retreat in order to follow this path, that we need a large amount of free time in order to properly comprehend this path. However, if you are not a person who can fit these certain checkboxes of being free or whatever, like myself, and you are very busy with work, can you effectively follow this path? Or should you give that all up, go into robes in order to follow this path? The answer is you can. You most definitely can. And you most definitely do not have to get into robes. My logical reasoning for this is, that would mean every person who was in robes should have reached somewhere by now. But we know from what we are seeing in media and all that, there are so many people who are spreading violence, who are really spreading kind of a very stupid overview into life without really diving deep. Granted, there are people who are preaching good stuff, who are preaching extremely dharmic stuff, but sad-dharmic stuff, like based on ultimate truth, is extremely less. It's very less. So the people, my teachers, have personally told me that you do not have to get into robes to follow this path. And I think that's amazing. That's beautiful. That would mean you do not have to compromise your job, your friends, your lifestyle, or whatever lifestyle you're living. You just have to change your perception of it. And the next question is, why should you change your perception of it? The answer is, because it's not ideal, because you have negative states of mind throughout the day. And your question would be like, how can you say that? I'm perfectly happy. I'm a very positive, happy person who is not affected by this kind of thing. If you believe you are this kind of person, then you are obviously lying to yourself. Because and that brings me to probably the most important quality to develop while going in this path: being honest to yourself. If you think that you are in an extremely happy place in your life, and you might be for sure, but if you think it's devoid of any negativity, then again you are living an illusion. Then you are turning a blind eye to certain states of mind. And this is an extremely important part in the path. Honesty to the outside world, yes, and more importantly to yourself. Being honest with yourself, accepting what you feel. Because sometimes some things might hurt you, but you might push that away. You might suppress it, push that away, or you might listen to music or do something else. You might distract yourself from the whole thing. This is the wrong approach. While going in this path, the first step is acceptance. Okay, I am feeling something here. Okay, this is causing me somewhat of a distress. Okay, this is stressing me out. Accepting that, and accepting that you are not beyond these things, is extremely important. Because the initial response, I feel like, including myself, like I went through this a lot, where when I'm where I'm practicing this, and then I like to think of results, I like to think that I've got somewhere. So I try to, through attachment, through tanha, get to that state of mind where I am not affected. But this is the ultimate trickery, the trickery of the mind. It's trying to show you that you are getting somewhere when you are not. So you have to be extremely honest with yourself. You have to be very open with yourself. You have to talk to yourself one-on-one. You can't be fooling around. And the easiest way to do this is to be an honest person in general. If you are the type of person who tends to lie to other people, who gives a lot of white lies, who resorts to white lies, it's going to be a bit difficult. Actually, it's going to be very difficult in order to get to this path. Because honesty with yourself, in order to become honest with yourself, firstly, you have to develop honesty in general. Then it will be much easier to do that. The reason I tell this is because if we are not honest with ourselves, there is no way we can progress further on, because we are just going to keep on lying to ourselves and living a lie. And the other thing is, you have to be open. We have to be open when going on this path. Like, we have to accept the fact that we do not know. And because we do not know is why we suffer, is why we have dukkha. And there are people out there who know better. And by this, I mean the people who have walked on this path to a great extent, or the people who finished this path, who've reached Nibbana. We have to accept that these people know better, so we can take the particular meditation objects or karmasthanas they give us. So that's extremely important, to be humble and to walk this path. So be honest, being humble and accepting we are wrong, and being open to things that we do not know. Because we might be 100% convinced that we understand something, but it turns out that we've been living in ignorance. It might be the case. So we have to be always open to ourselves being wrong. So whenever you come to an understanding, oh my gosh, I've been having the wrong idea about this, I've been having the wrong impression about this for the longest period of time, that is not a reason to get upset. That is a reason to rejoice, because you are moving forwards, because you are breaking out of the box, because you are breaking out of your past false understanding, so you can move into a greater one. So those are very important. Honesty and being open to things. I think those are very important qualities to develop. Okay, now let's get into this specific technique, this specific formula which I've been talking about. And this formula, let me dive into it straight away, consists of 3 words which the Buddha taught: anicca, dukkha, anatta. Now these 3 have mistranslations currently, and that's why a lot of people cannot really practically apply this in their day-to-day lives. So I'm not going to tell you about the mistranslation, which is basically anicca has been called impermanence, and dukkha basically I think it's more or less right, and anatta has been called non-self. So putting that aside, it's basically anicca means nothing in this world can be maintained to your liking. Dukkha means any negative state of mind or the noble truth of dukkha. And anatta means not valuable. Not valuable. Okay. So let's explore anicca first of all. When we say anicca, we say it means nothing in this world can be maintained to your liking. Or in simpler words, not to your liking. Iccha means to your liking, anicca means not to your liking. I told this in the last video too. Lord Buddha said everything which exists in this world is anicca. The only thing not anicca is Nibbana. That's because we cannot comment on it. Putting that aside, everything in this world is anicca. Okay. But then the next obvious question is, if everything is not to my liking, then what about the things I like? What about the things I enjoy? What about the times I have with my friends, all the good memories I have and all the good happiness, all the joy I've experienced? How can that be not to my liking when it obviously is? Exactly. This is what we focus on. So when we take something as ichai or to our liking, we take it so because it gives us a certain sense of joy, a certain sense of happiness. This itself, this word happiness, it doesn't necessarily have to be happiness. Actually, you can be in a neutral kind of feeling in a particular place and you're not really feeling happy or sad, but you're feeling somewhat neutral, but you still can be attached to that moment. Yeah. And even you can feel a certain down kind of feeling and you still can attach yourself to that kind of thing. A good example for that is I have this playlist on Spotify called Pure Chill, which is basically all these mellow, sad songs. And when I listen to that playlist, I made it like a few years ago, and listen to that playlist, I feel this kind of low feeling. And I noticed I really like getting into that feeling. So it can be to any emotion. So you can have iccha, you can like any emotion. So ichai, there is a state of mind which you attach yourself to. Iccha is basically anything you like. Anything you like is because it gives you a certain sense of joy. This joy can be in either 3 of the emotions, okay? You like something, it gives you a certain sense of joy, and because of that, you automatically value this particular thing. Okay, because you value this particular thing, you tend to do certain things to ensure that you will get this thing throughout. A good example is a friend. Say you talk to someone, you have a conversation with someone, and both of you mutually benefit from this. Then that's kamathi sena, that is to your liking, that's ichai. Okay, so because of that, it gives you a certain sense of joy. Because of that, you take value in that. Because of that, you label it and you become this particular person who always comes in contact with this other person. So both of you can experience that particular joy. The problem with this is, even though you took that as ichai, that is to your liking, your understanding was it is to your liking, it gave you joy, ichai sapai, and sarai, or attai. Attai means valuable. So how it goes is ichai sapai sarai. Basically, you took it to your liking because it gave you a certain sense of joy, and therefore it was valuable. Lord Buddha said, it is actually anichai dukkai anattai, which basically means it is not to your liking, it gives you dukkha, and this dukkha is basically a hidden kind of negative. It's a negative which we do not usually see, which is very difficult to see, and the entire practice is properly seeing this dukkha. I'll get into that in more detail. So anicca dukkha anattai. Anattai means not valuable. Okay, so things in this world, we take it to be in our liking. We take it so because we think it gives us a certain sense of happiness, contentment, joy, and because of that we automatically value it. This is fundamental to anything, be it certain sites like mountains or whatever, be it certain smells, certain tastes, your favorite food, your favorite songs, and be it certain people, certain concepts, certain trips. For example, you can be someone who values friendship a lot. You can be someone who values relationships a lot. You can be someone who values loyalty a lot. You can be someone who values, different concepts, different values. You value these things because when you become this value, it gives you a certain sense of contentment, joy, and so you automatically value it, it is to your liking. Again, anicca dukkha anatta. So there's very little to remember, but I think it's extremely useful if you can remember this particular formula, anicca dukkha anatta. Yeah, so your vidarshana, your vipassana, your meditation starts when you take something as ichai sapai sarai. Okay, so in the last video I told you we only have to vidarshana, we only have to look into it when it's causing us dukkha. Okay, so say something is causing us dukkha, that is because we took something which was anicca in nature to be iccha, and now because of that it has given us dukkha, and so it is actually asarai or anattai or not valuable. Okay, let me use one example. So let's take your partner. Okay, your partner is giving you a certain sense of joy. Okay, being with your partner, you can be in a particular way. It's making you happy up to a certain extent, and it's a really good kind of feeling. Yeah, I'm sure we experienced this. So it is to your liking. So being with that particular person, and the way they are is to your liking. That's, what is it? Ichai. Then it's obviously giving us a certain sense of joy, sapai. And because of that, because of how they make us feel and what they are and how they make us feel, both are important. It's giving us certain joy, and obviously because of that, we value this. Because there is a transaction here, and this transaction we greatly benefit. We feel in a different way. We feel a certain sense of comfort. We feel a certain sense of ourself. which has been valuable to us. Why? Because we took that as Ichchai Sapai Sarai. Okay, now while you are basking in this feeling of goodness and when you are completely head over heels in love, it's fine. It's completely fine. But the problem comes when you start to have a little bit of trouble in your relationship. And I'm sure most of us experience this. We question as to why is this happening? And our initial obvious response is to blame that other person and say, no, it's your fault. Yeah, so this is actually, I think, third quality which has to be developed. So the first quality I said was honesty, and the second quality was to be open, and the third quality is to say that there is absolutely nothing wrong in this world and everything wrong with our perception of it. There's everything wrong in the way we see the world and nothing wrong with the world. Now, this itself is a controversial statement, no, because you could say, okay, there are pedophiles in this world, there are rapists in this world, there's a lot of misogyny which is happening, there's a lot of wars going on, and it's terrible. Yes, true. All that is completely accepted in a conventional sense. But what I'm saying is, ultimately, even though these things are happening and these things should not be happening, this is still the nature of the world. If we are to get emotionally involved in each and every one of these aspects, we will only get ourselves down. The response here is not to get emotionally involved, but to understand that this is the nature of the world. There is no such thing as an ideal world. That's extremely important to understand. This world is extremely anicca. It's not to our liking. So because of that, our response isn't to try so hard to change the world. Our response is to understand the world. And that is extremely important. So if something is giving us suffering, for example, say there's a person in the road and someone is hitting a person and is obviously harming it. Does that mean you should look away and walk away because the world is anicca? No, obviously not. That's extremely impractical. What you have to do is you have to stop that. You have to stop that event from happening if you believe, like, if that other person needs your immediate attention. You don't let go like that. We have to be practical about these things. Now, but the thing is, you might get afraid or you might get angry at this other person. You might get sad at this particular incident afterwards. This emotional reaction which comes to the world is what we are trying to work on. Now, this emotional reaction which comes to this world is involuntary. We do not choose this. It automatically happens to us. I see certain people, because I work in wards and all, certain cancer patients who come and they have breast cancer, and it's terrible. It's a terrible state for the patient to be in. But there are some students, there are some people, maybe family members or whatever, who see this kind of thing and they're extremely sad about this entire thing. There are medical students, there are fellow medical students I've met, and they also get really upset seeing this kind of thing. But now the truth of the matter is, there are so many people, there are millions of people, thousands to millions of people probably maybe who are suffering from cancer. And there is nothing really we can do about it. I mean, of course, if you are really passionate about it, that doesn't mean you should stop everything. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try to cure the patient. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this emotional reaction to this is unnecessary because that is the way the world is. The world is not an ideal place. The world is not going to fit the standard of your mind, of what you think the world is supposed to be. Okay, now let's backtrack to this. Let's backtrack to this example of anicca, dukkha, anatta. Yeah. So when we are experiencing a particular state of dukkha, the response is to look at this dukkha and to accept, okay, I'm feeling a bit down here. I'm feeling a bit negative here. And going back to the example of the relationship, what is it that is causing me this state of dukkha? So you can go into this formula and see what have you taken as ichcha, what have you taken as to your liking, And more often than not, you would see that it's the things which caused you happiness with your partner which are now causing you the sadness. What I mean by this is there might be a certain kind of way your partner acted or your partner was around you, a certain kind of way they would speak, a certain kind of way they would understand and resonate with what you're saying. And now maybe you are devoid of that. And because you are devoid, it's devoid of that now, you feel angry at them. Why? Because they are not fitting the standard of your mind. How did this standard of your mind come? Because you took it as ichai sapai sarai. Because you took it to be to your liking. You took it to give you a certain sense of happiness. And so it was automatically valuable. And what happens when we lose what is valuable to us? We get really stressed. We get really heavy. We get really insecure. We get really agitated. Because we are losing what was valuable to us. What we are actually losing is not our partner. Our partner is still here. What we are actually losing is this model of the partner we had in our head. That was what was important to us. Because them being in this particular way made us feel ourselves the most. And now that it is gone, we are losing a sense of identity, and along with that we are losing a sense of joy, we are losing a sense of ourself when our partner doesn't act the way we want. When our partner doesn't act in the way which once caused us so much happiness. Because of that, it is giving us dukkha. And because of that, this entire process of attachment and excessively liking it and excessively wanting it is invaluable, is not valuable. So now that is a lot to take in, because once you start looking into these particular concepts, things which you thought were very valuable are not really valuable. And so what does that mean? Should you break up with that partner? Should you leave that partner? No. Like I said, you don't have to do any lifestyle modifications. You just have to develop certain qualities, but you don't have to make any rash decisions. Do not. Properly be with that person and see why that person is bringing you down. It can be a superb karmasthana. Karmasthana is it can be a really good meditation object. It can be the thing which will help you to develop the path. So whenever you get something which is causing you dukkha, do not get rid of it. Stay with it. It's extremely important you stay with it, because this is where your path develops. Like I said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this world. So there's nothing wrong with that partner. There's only what's wrong is our perception of it. So this is an excellent opportunity to look at our partner. And to more than look at our partner, look at how we respond and react and what we expect from our partner. So anicca, dukkha, anatta, that's an example of how we apply it. And we can apply this to absolutely anything. Yeah, say you are having, it cannot be a partner, it can be like your mother. So I apply this with my mother. I had a model of what my parents were supposed to be. They were supposed to be understanding. They were supposed to be supportive of me. And yes, this is a good idol. This is a good ideal of what parents are supposed to be. But more often than not, they are not going to match your standard. So the problem was, I took something as ichcha. What did I take as ichcha? What did I take as to my liking? The moments I've spent with my parents where they've been really understanding, where they've really showed love and support, I've taken these, I've upadanat them. That is, I kept them really close to my mind. I've attached to them. I'm bound to those particular moments. And so I am going to want to recreate these moments all the time. Yeah. And so it is giving me dukkha, and because it is giving me dukkha, it is not valuable. That again does not mean I let my parents go. That means I change the perception of the way I look at them. So I will be free from my dukkha. Now when we take the word dukkha, there are three types of dukkha. Dukkha, sankhara dukkha, and viparinama dukkha. So dukkha is basically the state of mind where we are longing for that may positive. Okay, let's go backtrack into the relationship example. We are with a particular person, and maybe we are having coffee and we are having an amazing conversation and we are really vibing with this other person, and you automatically attach to it and you automatically attach to this positive. Okay, now there are three problems with this positive. This positive, there is a hidden negative. So in our lives, what we believe is that, say this is like a zero line, that there is this zero line, and say we eat a good pizza, one up, and it goes down. So we talked about the going down, it goes down. And then say we get into a relationship and it goes up, but the truth is now we know it goes down. Yeah, and then say you get something else, up down, and it's like that. But the truth of the matter is, it's not really a zero. There is really these negative states you fall to in order to experience the positive. If it wasn't for this negative state, you wouldn't really enjoy the positive also. So there's something like that also. In order to experience the positive, you have to fall into somewhat of a negative. And this negative, what I mean by this negative is this dukkha, this wanting for it. Okay? So this wanting for it is inherently like this hunger to have your partner in a certain way. This we consider as a dukkha. Okay, so this hungry kind of state, this hungry state to have your partner behave the way you want to behave, to talk and understand it could be different things to different people, but that state of wanting is what we call dukkha. And then, so why do we stay in this dukkha? Because of this happiness which had come to us at a particular time. Then the problem with this happiness is that there was this dukkha involved. Also, there was this viparinama dukkha. Now, the viparinama dukkha is, even though you get this particular happiness, this happiness eventually fades and it goes away. And now when it goes away, you are going to need another kind of wanting. You are going to have to talk to your partner, go into therapy, like really, buy some gifts and make it happen. Bring up that spark again. So all that wanting is dukkha. The fact that happiness doesn't last is viparinama dukkha. And this work you do in order to maintain this boyfriend or husband or wife or girlfriend image is what we call sankhara dukkha. You must also, arrange like a family life, and you might get problems with that. You should also do a job in order to sustain the other aspects of the relationship. Yeah, so you have to call them, you have to like maintain it. All these other physical and mental work which anyway falls into this is sankhara dukkha. Okay, so dukkha is the wanting for it, sankhara dukkha is like the work you have to do for it, and viparinama dukkha is when that happiness does not last. So when we take anything as iccha, truly it's not joy. I mean, joy definitely exists, but within that joy there are three hidden dukkhas. And it's important to contemplate what these dukkhas are and see, because these dukkhas exist, it is actually invaluable. Now, say you do this vidarshana. I'm saying this again because I think it's really important that we do this vidarshana, and then the response should not be to shut ourselves away from this relationship, because that is a worldly approach. That is not the path. That is basically you are distracting yourself with something else. You should never reject your partner, because the only moment you can properly let go is through understanding. And even though you let go in your head, you do not still have to let go externally. The letting go happens here and here. It happens within. It doesn't happen in the outside. So that is extremely important. So yeah, so that is the formula. Again, anicca, dukkha, anatta. That is the true nature of the world. How we take it is icchai, sapai, sarai. And basically every time we experience dukkha, see what we took as icchai, sapai, sarai. And that is the vidarshana. So this is one way of vidarshanaing. And there are other ways, basically looking at, another thing I do is through the Paticca Samuppadaya and meditating, sitting meditation on the Paticca Samuppadaya. it is said that when we take something as itcha, pativali mandenava, and you fall into this cycle which is the paticca samuppadaya. Maybe I will do that in another video, but that is a bit more advanced. Okay, let's see if I hit all the points I wanted to hit. Yeah, so another thing, I think I mentioned that it is completely independent of the place you are in. You do not have to do any changes. Is the path the same for everyone? Is the path the same for everyone? Yes and no. The Vidarshana, like this formula, is pretty much the same. But where we are attached to are very different. Different people are attached to different things. Some people might be attached to sex, some people to relationships, some people to food, some people to different things. To movies, I don't know, some strange things. I've noticed that what I am attached to the most is being free, is having a chilled out state of mind, this kind of relaxed kind of lifestyle. That is what I think I'm most attached to. So different people, so for a person who really enjoys hard working, this might be extremely alien to him or her. So different people are attached to different things. So the path would be different in the sense that they will have to work on different things. But essentially how they work on it, the Vidarshana, even though again it can be different, the formula basically is pretty much the same. Yeah. So awareness. So sati again is very important. Like when we are more and more honest with ourselves, we will develop this samma sati, this sati which we will understand little by little how our minds are actually working. And initially, when the littlest bit of dukkha comes, we'll be able to quickly vidarshana and see. And it will automatically start happening. And eventually, you will come to a point, you will not fall into dukkha. And your dukkha will not escalate up to a huge extent. Because now there is a intuitive understanding. You don't have to force yourself you should never force yourself not to feel dukkha, because then again that is forcing. But automatically, because as your understanding, as your vidyava develops, your pragnava develops, you will not fall into so much negativity. It will automatically happen. So I think that's about it. If you all have any questions, I hope this was clear. I hope I didn't rush through it, and I hope I wasn't dragging either. I hope you all understood. And if you all need, if there are any questions on this matter, or if you all disagree with something and you all want to start up a discussion on this, please do so. I'm very much open to it. I think we have to discuss on these things so that so this path will become open to more and more people. It is a wonderful path. I think it's an extremely mind-blowing path, because you discover certain aspects of yourself by yourself. And when you come into certain levels of, like, when you see certain insights, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool kind of path. And it's pretty chilled out also. But at sometimes it can be rough. So that's the other thing. I will end on this note. That when I said this path was extremely dynamic, what I meant was sometimes you might feel that you have to suppress. Okay, maybe you are getting a certain kind of feeling and you feel like, no, like I don't want, like for example, say you are doing a particular work and you really have this extreme dukkha, say to go to the fridge and eat some biscuits. Okay, you are having a dukkha, you are having a wanting, a dukkha to go and do that. But then you see, okay, now this biscuit, it's not really for my nutrition, it's just for my craving. And after I get that certain sense of positive, it's going to go into it's going to again go away, then it's going to viparinama dukkha, and I have to maintain this body and all that just to get the biscuits. Now it's all three dukkha's. And then you might Now that part, although logically is powerful, it has a good energy. Although that is happening, you still are going to need that biscuit. You are going to be like, no, yeah, true, but still I need that biscuit. Okay, so you can try two things here. You can try to suppress that and say no, but eventually, sometimes your mind will really want the biscuit. Then let it go and have the biscuit. So know when to close and know when to open up. So there is no such thing that always you have to close, always you have to open up. You can try both. If you feel like following your mind is a pain in the ass and you can't really always keep on doing this, then go ahead and like suppress it. It's like another example I've heard a monk use is it's like a snake. Like it's like a snake who is in this hill, and there are multiple holes, and the mind is an example for the snake. He'll try to come out from different holes, be it food, be it a certain other concept, be it love, be it wanting to talk to a friend or whatever. Like it might try to come in different holes, and you cannot concentrate on doing what you want to do. Say you are doing a certain kind of meditation object, say it's even working, you are studying, and you are going to get all these other things you are going to want to do. So one approach is to like identify it with your awareness, stop it there, and close the hole when the snake is trying to get out, when the mind is trying to get out. Then a little while later, the snake will come through another one. Then close that hole also. And then close. But eventually, once you do this, automatically you will realize you can't keep on closing. And because the mind will eventually nicely escape. So when it escapes, and where you cannot hold it in anymore, let it go. Let it go and watch it go and see where it goes. Get lost in it and see where it goes. But stay aware and let it get lost. Let it get lost in awareness. Do not lose your awareness. So eventually, even after that entire trip happens and it comes back in, now you can vidarshana and see what happens. So it's a very dynamic process. It's not, if I were to say, is this path suppression? I would say absolutely not. But if I were to say, if you were to ask me, so there's no suppression at all, I wouldn't say yes to that either. It's a mixture of everything, and according to the moment also it changes. According to the vidarshana also it changes, and you have to try out all these things. Now personally, in my experience, I tried out different things, and what I realized is it's a dynamic path, but something which always has to be there is awareness, looking into it. Sometimes you should relax and just stand back and just let the mind do its thing and just look shape pe look, and sometimes you don't have to vidarshana. Sometimes go really deep and vidarshana. There's no such thing as this is the absolute path. It's a very dynamic, changing path. Okay, so thank you very much. Please leave a comment, a question, and I'll see you in the next one.